Every good hero does have theme music, and this is Online Big Blue. This is Tim, bringing you the best in New York Giants sports talk and entertainment. It's a rare Saturday video. Saturday. Want to talk about a couple things. Want to talk about a little bit of a twist of the injury report for Kadarius Toney. Want to talk about Matt Rule and the Panthers potentially tipping their plays. And I want to talk about the New York Giants offense. Has it gotten any better, or is it any different than when Jason Garrett was here? And I think it may surprise a few people what I'm going to say. But let's first talk about Kadarius Toney. He was a limited practice on Thursday. Then on Friday was practice. He was downgraded to not practicing at all, which was kind of weird because Friday's practice was just a walkthrough. It was nothing. It was a walkthrough. It was a walkthrough practice. And it's a type of practice that you could probably participate in, even if it would basically be like what he did on Thursday, where he was limited at practice. And it's just kind of weird that they downgraded him to not practicing on Friday when it was just a walkthrough. Now, of course, Toney first injured his hamstring back in mid-August. And though we had to deal with that, then we had some other issues and some other things going on. But it's just weird. It's just weird that he is out again, or he's not participating again. There's nothing really changed anything else on the Friday injury report. Justin Lane had a concussion. Nick McLeod is with the hamstring. Aaron Robinson and Leonard Williams and Toney were all held out. Wan'Dale Robinson was also held out of practice. Dane Belton with his clavicle. Jason Pincock, Azeez Ojulari, Kayvon Thibodeau, and John Feliciano were limited participants of practice as well. So, like I said, it's interesting. The Giants will start reporting their questionable and doubtful statuses on Saturday, so we'll get some more information in reference to that. I don't know. You think about these things with Toney, and you just kind of shake your head. It's always something. The last year and change, it's always been something. He's got to get on the field. He's got to stay on the field. He's got to participate in the field. He's got to participate in practice. Maybe he could return some punts. I don't know. You got a guy that you invested a first-round pick in, and it's already not looking good. You drafted redundancy in Wan'Dale Robinson, of course, who's still out with the knee. But, like I said, some players, injuries are just bad luck. With Kadarius Toney, it always seems to be something. So we have to keep an eye on that as the season progresses. Dan Orlovsky pointed out that that potentially the Carolina Panthers could have been tipping their plays by certain ways that Christian McCaffrey was lining up in certain formations on last Sunday's game, and the Giants were keying off on that, and that's why they had so much difficulty. The Panthers did against the Giants defense, or it could have been just the Giants defense played well. I don't know. Could be that as well. It's not like. In some regards, you got to think of it in reference to baseball, where sometimes pitchers tip their pitches. You can tip plays in the NFL. You can, because you line up in certain formations. You line up in certain player packages. Last year, the Giants did that a little bit under Patrick Graham because he never really changed anything from the year prior, which is why the league so quickly figured out his defense last year, and they went kind of to a bend not break defense. But do I think that was the root cause for the Carolina offense sputtering? Maybe the Giants defense just played well. I know that's a serious and weird thing to think for some people in the NFL, but maybe that's just what happened. Now, the Giants offense, if you look at it, and you look at it on paper, outside of Saquon Barkley, what has changed from the 2 seasons previously? Really think about it. What has changed? People will be like, well, there's more motion. There's more motion. Okay, I'll give you that. There's more motion. But you know what? This is the NFL. This is 2022. It's not like when back in the early 80s when the Air Coryell and the Chargers used motion quite extensively for one of the first times in the NFL that used that much motion. It's nothing new. As a defensive back, you have a wide receiver. And in my days, it called you just shadowed your man. So if he went into motion, you just followed him across the field. And then if you're in a zone, you just adjust your zone. It's not that big of a deal. I think it was one of those things that certain parts of the fan base just kind of gripped onto. I was like, oh, we have motion now. Yeah, your wide receiver also has to be set before you, and your man in motion has to be set before you snap the ball. So, I mean, it's not like motion is adding this nuance to the offense that anyone's never seen before. And like I said, back in the early 80s, it was inventive. Air Coryell, Don Coryell, Chargers, Dan Fouts, Winslow. That was inventive. Now it's not inventive. The only difference between the first two games and the last 2 years is we're running the ball more effectively. And we ran the ball more effectively that first game, but did we run it more effectively the second game? No. No, we didn't. It wasn't until the fourth quarter that, thank God, Saquon Barkley turned on the Jets and figured it out, that we started gaining some ground on the ground. But the offense, and I liked it. I love when people talk about, how this is going to be like the Kansas City offense. It's going to be like the Buffalo offense. Okay. I think some people forgot or were unaware that the offense for the Giants, in reference to Jason Garrett, was steeped in the Air Coryell motion offense. It was also very similar in many nuances to the offense that the Kansas City Chiefs run, that they're running with Kafka and Dable. They're very similar. Not identical, but very similar, which is why I find this more perplexing than anything else, because of the fact that you are still not matriculating. I always love that word. When you got, who was it, Hank Stram? When he was like, yeah, come on, boys, we got to matriculate the ball down the field. You're not matriculating the ball down the field via the air. You're not. We're still not getting that air attack. And I know people are going to say, well, it's going to take a couple weeks for the offense to get in gear. Well, you had 3 preseason games. You had an entire training camp. I've seen new offensives, thank you, I can't talk today, installed new ones during an entire training camp and then come out and run like precision clockwork the first couple of weeks of the season. You've also seen it go the opposite way. But I just find it interesting that really nothing has changed outside of Saquon Barkley running the ball well and running the ball effectively. Our blocking, what would you say our blocking was, above average? I'm not even going to say it's above average. I'm going to say our blocking right now is average. Daniel Jones does have time. People are going to point out the fact that Daniel Jones, in reference to the fact that when he's hit this amount of time, missed this amount of time, and this, but also people forget, and they always quote these stats. But also right now, Daniel Jones is in the top 5 for holding on the ball the longest in the pocket. If you want to talk about stats, he's been in the top 5 almost his entire career. He was in the top 3 2 years ago. He was in the top 5 last year, and he's back in the top 5 again. In reference to getting the ball out of the pocket for having holding on to the ball the longest amount of time. That's another interesting, perplexing problem. But all this, like I said, is just interesting because of the fact that if you take a look at the production, if you take a look at the way this offense is run outside of a few trick and gadget plays, which Jason Garrett did as well, if you take away all that, it looks eerily similar to what we've seen the last 2 years. Now, I'm not saying that's a bad thing because I never really had a problem with the offense that we were going to run under Jason Garrett. I never did. I think some of the offensive game plans that he called were fantastic. It was the execution it was the quarterback play and the execution that seemed to be the problem, and the fact that we lacked a running game. Because they were also pointing people out, well, they only run this route, and they only run this route. Well, someone distinctly pointed it out on Twitter that they're basically running very similar routes that they ran last year as well. The difference is the fact as well, there have been, like last year, there have been guys wide open. We're just not finding the open guy. Now, the personnel has been changing. We've upgraded the skill position. We've got bookend tackles now. You went out and signed, Glowinski and Feliciano. You drafted a couple other guys. You got Saquon Barkley, like I said, if this is all just comes down to this. And we've talked about this a million times before. This entire offense runs through Saquon Barkley. And what's going to start happening now is you are going to have teams putting 7-8 in the box and telling the New York Giants, we do not believe in your passing game. We do not fear your wide receivers. You need to have your quarterback beat us. That's what they're going to do. And that's kind of what Carolina did. Now, I'm going to tell you this. Tennessee, average defense. I thought that they were going to be better. They've been the last 2 games a very average defense. Carolina Panthers, good athletic defense, still NFL average. I would not say above average. I would say they were an average defense. Now you're going to go in and face, you have the Cowboys coming in to face us. And that's the same thing. I don't think the Cowboys defense is that, spectacular. I think they're average. I think they're a little bit, they might be slightly above average. But it should be an offense. If you have your skill guys in Saquon Barkley and a good game plan, you should be able to put up some points on them. Outside of Diggs and a few other players. And you have to worry about Parsons. So it's going to be an interesting, first of all, Giants have not played well recently in primetime. Daniel Jones is horrid in primetime. So we have to wait and see what they're going to do. I'd be interested to see if they turn on the Jets, if they open up the playbook a little bit more. But honestly, I can't say they haven't opened up the playbook. I can't say that. Because, like I said, I've had people send me multitudes of videos from last week's game showing at least 5 separate plays where Daniel Jones had a clean pocket and Daniel Jones had guys open deep. And I mean open deep. And he didn't take the shot. And I love it because you had the Brian Dable article saying, we have to figure out what makes Daniel Jones tick. Well, no, we don't. Because he's not going to be here next year. We need him right now. If you think you can win some games, if you think you can push yourself towards a playoff run, you got to get Daniel Jones to play somewhat average, because you can look at his stat lines and people are like, well, he did this. And, and I've said this a million times, moments in games are snapshots in time. You need someone that's going to have longevity throughout the entire game, who is going to play consistency through the majority of the game, not just single moments in time. And again, this is Tim with Online Big Blue, bringing the best in New York Giants sports talk and entertainment. And as always, if you could subscribe. If you can ring that bell, you know what it means. That'd be awesome.